frame to the panel utilizing the acorn glue, which is how I would suggest to do that. Rulers, and I am using just regular straight rulers. It would be nice if I had a nice Hello everybody and welcome back to the Quilter's Apothecary. We are on our next part of our panel Kaleidoscope series. So I want to start off by saying we are in my fabric room right now to film the next section because I needed the big table. But before we go to the step that I need to do at this table, I'm going to take you over to a couple clips and we're going to look at that. The first one is going to be discussing, once I get the frame done, what if you finish your frame and when it's on your design wall you realize, ooh, now it's kind of shrunk down a little bit and things are going to distort parts of your panel that you don't want to. So let's go over and talk a little bit about that. And then the second clip that we're going to go to is actually, I've changed the frame a little bit, removed a few of the halves of the hexagons, and you can see the difference between what we initially planned and then taking a few to make it right with all of the shrinkage and the seam allowances. Okay, so let's head over and look at that. Okay, so and all the rows are pieced together. We've got a mock-up up here on the panel. So we're making a few adjustments. I actually had to get rid of two of the pieces here because as we lost space, we were going to lose part of the tail. I don't want to lose part of the tail. And then as we put this up, now I want to get rid of this one, and this one. So I'm going to get rid of these three, and that way we know that everything that I want in there is going to fit. And that is part of the process as well. We want to make sure, you know, once you piece it all together, you can guesstimate and hope that the seam allowance is going to work. But then sometimes stuff happens. So we will get rid of this one, along with the few that we got rid of as well. And then that'll be perfect. So just so you know, once you get everything done in the frame and you lay it out, better on a flat table, of course, but we're using a design wall right now because we're in the long arm studio. Just know that you may come across some pieces that you're gonna have to go in and get rid of because they might interfere in a way that you don't want to interfere. All right. Okay, so what we've done is we have taken away the few blocks that I felt were taking away from what I didn't want to cover. So we have all of the lion's paw, all of the lion's tail in place, as opposed to covering part of it. So I absolutely love how it turned out. So now, of course, we are going to head over to the table where we are going to go ahead and we are going to attach the frame to the panel utilizing the acorn glue, which is how I would suggest to do that. And I will, of course, clarify that. I will do it with you step by step. Now, the thing is, it is hanging up. Before I go to the table, remember when I said we never go near any of this with starch or anything like that? Now is the time, though, that I'm going to actually take the panel and I'm going to starch the heck out of it because I want it nice and flat for this next part. I don't want any starch on here on the pieced frame. I just want the starch, and I'll probably have it starched about 3 times just so it's nice and firm and nice and square and straight through the next process. I will see you over at the table and we'll begin the next step. Okay, so now you've seen the whys and the hows and the permission to make new decisions once you get the frame together. Don't be too shy to take apart pieces that you find, nope, that doesn't work anymore. Okay, so now I've got my frame set aside here. We have starched 4 or 5 times. the panel so it's nice and firm. It's laid out flat. Of course, you're going to find a nice big table, whether it's your dining room table or something like that. Lay it out flat. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through my process, and then you take that and make it your own process however you want to do it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to have a few rulers, and I am using just regular straight rulers. It would be nice if I had a nice big 18-inch square, but I have that at my other studio, so I'm not going to be able to use that right now. So I'll set these off to the side. I do have on the table that I'm going to actually be doing this next step, I have my, as you can see here, my pressing table from the other studio. I'm going to be using that to attach the frame to the panel with the glue. With my mini iron, I am going to use the mini iron to do that. Now we have the frame, so I'm going to have Amber help me, just to save a little time from fussing. I'm going to line this guy up where I want it to be now that I've moved it from my design wall. It'll take just a little bit of fussing and moving around. Okay. I'm just going to check underneath. I'm going to look at my little bit of salvage left there. See how I like that. I want to look at my placement. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to shift the frame up a little higher. I like that because I like this part right here kind of blending in to the lion. The tail is full. I'm not cutting off any bits of the lamb. Let me see how far we've got to go there. Now, I have to say for myself, I don't really care about the panel underneath, whether it's completely square. I'm actually looking at the squareness of the frame itself. Now, let me also say this. I'm doing an odd shape that's bleeding into the panel. If you've created it so that you've cut a rectangle that you're going to place over, that's when you would use your straight rulers and a square to figure out the corners and keep everything straight. Mine's going to be a little bit more forgiving because I'm not doing that, but I do want to make sure that I have everything, I can't say in the right place, but in the right place for what I want. Let's see how much room I have up. I would like to go up about an inch, please. Right about to there. And just that little bit gives me a little bit more of that sky. Let's open it up a little. We'll square it off. I want to redo this. Now, it's about this time, if it's helpful on your table, that what you want to do is you want to go ahead and maybe get some masking tape. And once you get it in position, do a little bit of the masking tape. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that process. I'm going to grab some masking tape and I'm going to tape everything in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my chalk, safe chalk, that's going to wipe away. And once I get everything in place, I want to go ahead and make some registration marks along the edge of my frame, right on my piece, where I want everything to land properly. And that way, when I flip this up to slide in my ironing table and I flip it down, I know that I'm going to be able to go ahead and do that. So let me go get the masking tape. Let me get everything in place the way that you're going to do next. Now, if you want to, you can of course use your straight rulers. and you can line things up so that you know that they're perfectly square. Again, that's up to you how far you want to take it with this because it's such an odd shape. I'm not going to worry so much about that. I'd worry more about that if it were an actual full rectangle or a full square. So I'm going to go ahead, grab my masking tape, and get everything in the right position, and then we will come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so one thing I want to show is I've taken the panel and taped it flat to the table. And I've placed it clearly kind of where I want it. I want to line up the bottom. And for me, the bottom is important. I don't care how much sky I have showing, but I want to make sure, as Amber said, that I don't cut into my lamb or my lion, just like we talked about the tail, just like we talked about the paw over here. So I've got that pretty well square. I am going to go ahead, I'm going to take a few straight rulers. I've got it kind of in place, and I want to line up however many rulers it takes. If you have a long one, you only need one. I don't have that long of a ruler here, so I'm going to line those up and make sure that I have everything in place and fairly square at the bottom based on where I want it for this particular panel. And let me double check, it's not going into the lamb, it's awful close, but it's not there. Okay, so I'm going to do that, line that up. Masking tape again, this is where that's useful. I'm simply going to put a few pieces of masking tape there. Why? Because once I get everything in place, and again, this is now at the time where if you don't have masking tape, that's where the chalk comes in handy. You can use your chalk and kind of line up your peaks and your valleys and simply outline everything. You can do both. You can do one or the other. You can just do the chalk, but I gotta tell you, the masking tape really is helpful. And if you have any fullness, you just push down, like for example here, right here, if we can squeeze in tighter on that area. Right here, you can see there's a little bit of fullness with the bias from the taking down, putting back up, taking down. So I want to make sure to press so that we're not fanning that over to the right. Now, I'm going to repeat that just as a little bit of guides in case, just in case something happens. So I have a few registration lines. I am mostly depending for myself on the masking tape. Not painter's tape, not scotch tape. Painter's tape isn't going to hold. You want no duct tape, no duct tape. No furnace tape, no electrical tape. Good old-fashioned masking tape. Our cameraman was an electrician, so he, of course, would want to use.
Yeah,
Is an electrician. I guess there is no was. Was a. And obviously very sensitive about remaining called an electrician. After putting that many years in. How many years, Mr. Ritchie? 35 years. Woo woo. Okay, so now I'm going to go up a little bit here. Again, I want to try to keep that square and straight. If you have a square that you can put here, that's great. I don't have one handy, so I'm simply going to use this. Now, here is the other thing that I would like to do, that I tend to do with this. And that is, I'm going to grab my tape measure. I know that this is lined up pretty good how I want it here. Let me add
Don't be shy with the tape. That's going to come away once we start gluing. Not a big deal, but you want it to be able to hold things in place. This one especially, I don't want that going up into the lamb. Now, I want to grab my tape measure because this side is pretty stable, this edge, and this will be my home base kind of edge that I'm going to base everything on. Set that there. Follow that seam up. And I want to take this and I'm going to measure to here, 56 inches for my measurement. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Amber grab that. She's going to hold it more about right here-ish. And I'm going to line that up. And that's pretty darn close. I'm off like a quarter of an inch to 56 inches there. I'm simply going to take a piece of the tape. I'm going to put a piece of the tape right there. I'm going to ease that in a little bit because again, I want this to be as close as we can get. I'm willing to take that 1/8 to quarter of an inch there. I'm going to put a piece of tape there. And all I'm doing now is I'm not worried about the inside. I know that I can maneuver some of that. What I want, so that when I add on whatever type of border I'm going to add on here, I want to be able to have it as square as possible after the gluing. So I'm going to go here. We know that that was good. That was good. Now, if you're not OCD and a perfectionist about this, you can go ahead and just start gluing and go for it. But you're going to end up with a little warping. You're going to end up with some stuff that personally I don't want. So I would say just take this little half an hour so that your masterpiece turns out to be the masterpiece that you can get it as close to being as you can. And take your time. Again, hold things nice and flat because some areas have a little bit of bias. And notice that I didn't go up because I don't want to cause any distortion. I actually went up. I put this piece of tape here before I come back here to do this. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to put a little bit of tape there. So what I'm doing is I've got that pretty flat, and if there is any fullness in an area, I'm not going to move it into another area and create more fullness. I want to distribute any fullness that's there by the nature of a kaleidoscope quilt. That. There's that. Now, if I had my ironing pad under here while I was doing this, things would get off. That's why I don't put the ironing pad on. I want to go ahead and do this step before I have this on a pad. If you have a giant ironing board the size of this table, hey, you're good. But most of us, we don't have that. Or ever, I just heard, or ever will. There we go. I guess I got that answer, hey? All right. Headed off at the pass. Okay, and now if, Amber, if you would kind of put a few pieces of tape on that outer edge. And in the corners, just so that holds the corners stable. Excellent. Yeah, once we get the corners down. So again, I'm going to do the corners before I do all the tabs, just to keep things square so that we're working in fullness as we can. Okay, so now, yes, might as well. Yeah, no such thing as too much. Painter's tape is cheap. Seam ripping is not so cheap. Okay, so now I pretty much have everything in place exactly how I want to press. So let's go ahead and let me put a piece of tape here. And Amber, if you would remove the tape measure after I get the tape over here. Sorry. Thank you. Perfect. And just cause, I'm going to go ahead, excuse my lean, do right up into those cleavages where that V goes in. Okay. Now, look at everything. I would rather have too much tape than not enough. Trust me, folks. I'd rather use a $2 roll of masking tape. Penny candy, yes. Just like penny candy. There. Pretty well squared. And what I'm doing with these long strips is that's just adding a little bit of stability. Now what I want to do, I'm going to set that aside. Because of my odd shape, I'm going to gently roll that to here. I'm going to remove my bottom tape. Thank you, ma'am. That side can go away. And now I'm going to roll the whole guy up a little bit. that's as far as I'm going to go. And now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to grab my pressing table. I'm going to slide that in. Gently slide that down. Now, so I have my, I'm going to take it out just a little further. There we go, and right about there. I'm going to hold off because I'm sure that that's where my middle tape is for my panels, and I don't want to untape that. Everything is stable now. I've got my pressing table here. I'm going to fire up my mini iron. If you want to use a full size, you use a full size. I'm going to fire this up. I've got my glue full and handy. So when we come back, the iron will be heated and I will be ready to show you the next step. Okay. So I'm going to make sure my glue nozzle is clear. Keep my pin handy. My iron is on, the heat setting it needs to be on. I have no masking tape anywhere under that's going to cause an issue, at least in this section. So if we want to show that, that's great. Okay, good. So everything's good to go. And again, I have my pad goes all the way up to here. You can see where my crease is. Everything's stable and in place. Now what I'm going to do is very simply, I'm going to start here in the corner. So if we want to focus in on here, donkey chains. All right, I'm going to take off a piece of tape. I'm just going to go under the edge, lay some glue down right under that edge, right there. And I'm holding everything in place. I'm making sure not to hit any of the masking tape around it, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me check. That looks pretty good. I'm going to remove the next piece of tape. Iron is on the table. Thank you, sir. Put some glue. Right under there. I'm not putting a ton, but I'm putting enough, right? Because I want a nice seal. And with this acorn glue, you can do that. Okay. That's nice. Now, here's a couple little tips if you're doing it the way I'm doing it. A lot of people will use pins instead, which I get, but I just find that this tape just holds things just like the glue. The glue holds things better than pins will ever hold them. I am going to remove the tape as I'm working my way this way, rather than pulling the tape this way because that's bias there. I'm actually going to grab it. And when I remove the tape, I'm going to remove it towards what I already have done. I just find that that works a little better. Now I'm sitting straight down, so I'm going to get up here and get into my work. I'm going to check my glue, make sure my bead goes in there, make sure it hits those little cleavages down here. Again, I don't want to hold it too long, but I want to hold it enough. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue all the way across the bottom of the quilt. Once I get all the way over to the end, I want to widen that shot a little bit. Once I get all the way over to the end, then I'm going to take the piece and I can do one of two things. I can either turn it or go to the other side and do the other side. But what I tend to like to do is actually work up pretty even. So I'll probably just keep sliding it up and maybe remove the edge tape and moving it down towards me. I just find that that works best for me, but you've got to do what works best for you. Everybody's a little bit different with that. Okay, so again, just continue removing the tape. And the reason that I'm just doing a piece of tape for one seam at a time is because I don't want to shift anything. And remember, with this acorn, you've got that wonderful lid, but when you're using it, take that thing off of there so it doesn't keep flopping in your way. Now, the one thing I do want to say as well is know your precious points, right? What do I mean by precious points? Well, as I work my way across here, I'm getting closer to the lamb. I know that one of the precious points for me at this point is the lamb itself. So I want to make sure to be very careful not to go and maneuver that up and cover any part of the lamb. Now, here's something that I also want to say, which is not going to apply to everybody, and that is this. As I go into here and do this, I'm putting my glue here near the lamb, but one of the things that I want you to know that's different about my piece than what's probably going to be different about yours is this. And let me just press that and then we'll talk a little bit about that. If you remember correctly, on the previous video, I actually talked about I went out and found 3 more panels, which was hard to find of this particular panel because I wanted to kind of take mine to a little bit of a different, more of a museum level. And if we want to widen this shot a little bit, I'm putting this down there. And what I'm going to end up doing is this. I'm going to continue all the way around here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my sewing machine. I'm going to have invisible thread on the top, and then whatever bobbin you like to use. You don't use invisible on top and bottom. You only use it on top. And I'm going to do a nice zigzag around all of my, you would do a nice zigzag around all of your edges, down into your here, up. I like to use invisible. If you want to change based on color and use actual thread, that's your baby crying. I'm just going to use invisible. I just think that's the way to go. But when I do mine, I'm actually only going to do the sides, the top, and then down the other side, because if you remember correctly, I got the other 3 panels because I am actually going to go ahead and I'm going to thread paint um, a, a lamb on one of the panels and maybe just use the face and the back haunches of that thread painting. I'm also going to thread paint the face of the lion and the mane, possibly the back haunch and the tail to make it a little more dimensional, and then I'm going to applique that into this. That being said, I might, I don't know this yet, but I might actually create some thread painted grass to kind of go up into here. When and if I do that, then what I will probably end up doing is pulling this back, because you can do that with the acorn glue. I can actually pull that back, add some of that grass coming up into the lion, if I choose to do the grass. Um, and then after I finish that section, then I would go ahead and do this. But we're going to pretend you're not going to do all the thread painting. The thread painting is something we're going to add into this quilt over on the Patreon channel. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and pretend once I use the invisible thread and zigzag, again, small zigzag just to cover the edges so that they're all stable and so that they're all that. And then we remove the edges around the panel. I'll cut away the back edges that we don't need, get rid of some of that fullness. Then I will show you how I would go ahead and put a background border on this particular piece. I'm going to be using that blue velvet. You might use just regular cotton, whatever you're going to use. Everybody is going to do something a little different. And we're just going to pretend at that point that we're done, and then it just needs to be quilted. But I'm going to be continuing to add a little bit of thread painting motifs to the piece over on the Patreon channel once we actually add our border. I hope that makes sense to everybody. But my point was, I will not be zigzagging this. I will be gluing this in case I want to get into this once I finish doing the thread painting on the parts of the extra panels I purchased that's going to be added to this. Okay, so now, that being said, now that I've muddied the waters for you a little bit, I'm going to continue doing exactly what I'm doing all the way around. So go ahead and do that. And once you finish that, on our next episode, I will go ahead, I will have my machine hooked up, and I will show you how I utilize the invisible thread and just add a zigzag around the whole thing. All right, so there is our next step. So go ahead, get out your glue, grab your tape, get everything done there, and then on our next episode, we will do the next step, which will be doing the sewing with the invisible thread, and then also trimming away any excess of the panel. All right, everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you down the road.